Hi there, this is Sereno Sky again. I noticed some of you have already been listening in on chapter 1 and also chapter 2 and 3, which I posted here a few days ago. So I didn't want to wait too long to get to the next chapter so that those who are following this won't have to wait for the continuation uh, of the story. The next chapter is fairly long, so I may stop in between once, at the most twice, to just drink a little sip of water. That will be short though. And well, I'll just start without the big. Oh, yeah, I would like to just show for those interested um, that there's also Lonely Travel Part 2, which can be ordered on most online bookstores around the world, whether you'd like to have a printed copy like the one I showed you, or whether you would like to just get the digital copy so you can read it on your mobile, computer or phone. And this is the book I'm reading you, by the way, Lonely Traveler, my first book. And we're getting to chapter 4. If you really search for it, you will find it. The first morning I woke up in Formentera to the sound of beautiful waves. The sun was already quite high and shining on my face. We went back to the port, had some coffee, and then hopped on a bus to San Fernando. It had a restaurant and pension called Fonda Pepe, which was the main hippie hangout place on the island. Hippies weren't flooding in like in Amsterdam. It was a lot quieter. It is being said that Bob Dylan, Pink Floyd, Chris Rea, and King Crimson had all visited the island, maybe looking for some solitude for their creative work. Fonda Pepe was the only place on the island which was buzzing with hippies from all over the world. At the pool out in the back, we noticed a lot of hippies from the States. Hi there, nice to see some more freaks coming. One of them greeted us from the pool. We treated ourselves to some drinks and sat down for a while. The sun was getting very hot by that time, and it was time to head for the beach. The whole island is surrounded by long, stretched white beaches, except for the south of the island, which has a mountain with cliffs dipping into the sea. This time we headed for the other side of the island, and the beach was not far at all. By this time there were only 4 of us, the rest having stayed at the pension. Paul was one of the guys who still remained and with whom I had already been talking quite a bit about our view of things. This island is perfect to get away and think, he said. I need to find out what I want to do when I get back to England. My parents want me to study and take over the business. But I would like to do something more creative. He had started painting as a hobby. Well, then why don't you start here? I suggested. I will. I brought my pencil and paper with me. He unpacked this A4 size wooden board where he could just clip on a white sheet of paper and start. I've already seen a lot of stuff I would like to do. I haven't got paint with me, but I'm going to do the coloring at home. He showed me some stuff he'd already done on his way down here. This is beautiful. You definitely have talent. I actually enjoyed painting as well, but I had to admit it wasn't really my forte. I had once asked the staff at one of the sleep-ins in Amsterdam if they had some paint, as the entrance wall looked a bit grey and empty. They were happy that I wanted to paint something there, and I gave them a faint idea of what I had in mind. So they had brought me a few cans of various colors of wall paint, and I painted for a couple of hours. People actually really liked it. The next day, one of the Dutch guys took Paul and me for a bike ride on some of the bikes that were at their house. The island is only 18 kilometers long from north to south and quite thinly stretched with one road down the middle. I don't remember seeing a car that day, just a few bikers like ourselves. We took the road going south as it has this beautiful hill at the end called La Mola. It was all straight until we got to the bottom of the hill, but then the road made its way up and up. Finally, we got to El Mirador. The view from up there was incredible and made the hardship of getting up there well worth it. We could see over the whole island and its wide sandy shores, as well as over to Ibiza in the distance. On the way back we passed by this old windmill where Bob Dylan had supposedly stayed at, though there is no written record to be found regarding that. A bit tired from the bike ride, I must have slept long because when I got up the next day the sun was already quite hot. I hadn't planned anything for today, but I felt that I needed to be alone. I wasn't expecting some huge breakthrough in my spiritual search, but if I was going to find any, I knew I was going to have to be alone. We often connect being alone with loneliness, so we tend to shy away from it, but sometimes it's good and necessary to be alone. It certainly turned out that way for me. The island doesn't have very lush vegetation, so I wandered along past bushes and small fields with rocks surrounding them and occasional small farmhouses which seemed mostly abandoned. People had probably gone over to Ibiza, where there was money to be made in tourism. The smell of all kinds of herbs mingled with the salty wind from the nearby sea, and I could hear some birds chirping loudly. The occasional hum of a bee or fly reminded me that I wasn't alone. The fresh breeze from the sea invigorated my mind, and I took a deep breath of the herbal aroma carried along by the wind from the small trees and the fields. The sun was shining down on me. I felt its warmth, and I felt that today was going to be a step closer to what I was seeking. I had walked for about half an hour and found a lovely place along some stone wall, which someone must have built long ago. The sea wasn't far away as I could hear the waves splashing, but I didn't want to be distracted by the beauty of the sea which I love so much. But that stone wall looked like a very inviting place to sit down for some intensive time of meditation. I don't know how long I'd been sitting down and meditating there when I felt like I heard this inner voice, one which put a soft wave of peace all over me. There is peace to be found in the eternal now. I knew this wasn't my voice, as mine was filled with turmoil, and this voice gave me such inner peace. I was rejoicing inside for the first time. I was rejoicing inside that for the first time I had felt like I had really made some sort of spiritual connection. I felt extremely happy for the rest of the day. I thought that it had been worth traveling all the way to Formentera just to hear this one sentence. It was as if the sky, the clouds, the birds, the waves, and the trees around me had all gathered together that day in order to give me that message. Of course, they were probably speaking all the time, but for me it was the first time I had heard them to that extent. There is peace to be found in the eternal now. I reflected on that for quite some time, while just lying down in the grass and letting the sun caress me with its warming rays. Perhaps the eternal now represents a place where one can retreat to from a life where one so often feels like being surrounded by problems and questions. A place where problems just become more like specks of dust, I was thinking. I went back to the house, feeling quite encouraged and upbeat about my experience that day. The Dutch friend said that some hippies from England were organizing a party at the beach that night with guitars and bongos, and quite a lot of people were going to come as news had spread at Fonda Pepe. I felt like partying a bit that night and was looking forward to be among like-minded people. The sun was going to set in about an hour when we got to the beach, and from afar we could hear drums and guitars and a flute, the all-familiar sound I loved so much. I hadn't brought my bongos or guitar on this trip, but I had a new flute with me and was happy to join in. We didn't care much about perfection in those days. We were just jamming, and I still love doing this in just the same way nowadays. More hippies were streaming in, and some brought wine, while others filled the air with some familiar smoke. And the sun finally set. There must have been around 50 people there. I was talking to Paul, telling him a bit about my experience I had had that day. That's amazing, Bernardo, because today I also went out on my own after you had left, and I found this most beautiful spot and started drawing. I got so inspired, and I think it's my favorite piece of art so far. I felt so thrilled for him. I do hope you will be able to develop your gift, Paul, and that perhaps you'll be able to somehow make your living from it. Paul was in thought for a moment. You know, Bernardo, I think it's like this with creativity. I believe a lot more people would be creative if they would have more time. It's this treadmill of an 8 to 5 job that keeps people exhausted and unable to have any energy left to put their emotions and thoughts into something creative. I think one of the most important things you can do is to make sure you can allow yourself that freedom at some point in your life to be creative. When you are creative, it's your soul and your being that goes into whatever your creativity produces. If some people like it, that's just a pleasant addition, but not the main point. The main point is that you like it because it comes from inside of you and represents the real you. You seem to be into writing, Bernardo. I noticed you are writing quite a bit into that booklet you carry with you. Perhaps you should cultivate that too. He hit a certain point. I had wanted to become a journalist before and had actually visited a newspaper publisher. Of course, at that point, no newspaper would have wanted to publish my critical views of society. And I wasn't to become some mainstream writer who just reflected what people are supposed to think in order to be considered normal. It's true, Paul. I can write, but I like insight and mostly spiritual experience. But I keep writing things down that I'm thinking about. I had started jotting down notes on one of my trips to Amsterdam, mainly impressions, thoughts, but also questions about life that I wanted to find answers to. I was actually surprised that Paul had noticed, as I considered my time with my booklet somewhat holy. Not even any of my girlfriends had found out about it. I usually went for a few minutes to some quiet place if I felt there was something I needed to write down. That booklet had become an intricate part of my hippie bag, and I kept it like the apple of my eye. During our conversation, I had noticed this beautiful girl sitting down not far from me. It looked as if she had come on her own, or was at least sitting on her own and not talking to anyone. There was a certain glow on her face, partly from the fire that had been lit in the meantime, but also from something else. There was a certain peaceful aura on her face that caught my attention. I kept observing her for a while longer while talking to Paul. She wore a long flowery skirt, dark blouse, and some kind of hairband around her long brown hair, some of which was braided in the back. Her face seemed relaxed. She was listening to the music, and her eyes were looking out to the sea, into the distance. Paul, I think I'm going to go over to try to talk to that girl. She looks very interesting. I was generally quite an outgoing, social, and communicative person, but in moments like these I became very shy. So I took my flute and sat myself down behind her and started playing along with the rest of the music. It didn't take long for her to turn around, and this was the first time I saw her eyes. I swear at that moment I saw more stars in her eyes than there were up in the darkened sky. I stopped playing my flute the moment she turned around, as I felt so embarrassed. "Don't stop playing, it's so beautiful," she said with a big smile. Her smile made the night look like the brightest and sunniest days. "Good vibrations here," I said. It's a miracle that even this short comment found its way out of my mouth, as I felt almost speechless. I felt quite relieved that I had said at least something halfway significant at that moment. "My name is Anne. Nice to meet you," she said with a French accent. "My name's Bernardo, and we can speak in French if you prefer." I was used to it, coming from a bilingual city, though my first language was German. As it turned out, Anne originated from a village not far from where I came from, and her father was of Swiss German and her mom of Swiss French origin. She had grown up with both languages. "Do you sometimes visit my hometown?" I was wondering, because I'd never seen her before. "I needed to go there sometimes, but I've been living here for a year already. My boyfriend's a painter, and he paints, and I sell his paintings for him." I had also spent a few months on Ibiza before that, so I haven't been back to Switzerland for quite a while. Now I understood why I hadn't seen her before. "It's interesting how you can stay here on this island with sand and sea and make a living. I will need to go back soon as I don't have much money." She explained how it actually went quite well for them with selling the paintings, and that she would sometimes go over to Ibiza and sell them there as well. He must be a lucky man, I thought, doing his hobby while his beautiful girlfriend sells his paintings. "You should talk to my friend Paul over there. He would like to live from selling his paintings as well. As for me, I'm not that creative. I will probably end up at some factory job for a while when I get back." She looked at me with those warm eyes. You can't do anything else? She asked. Well, I finished commercial school, but I'm not going into economy. I started disliking society and its materialistic treadmill, so right now I'm trying to spend as little of my time in it as I can. Just enough to make a little bit of money so that I can continue traveling and finding out what I'm supposed to do in this world, I said. I know how difficult it is to find the right thing to do, she said. I had studied tourism. My parents wanted me to do so in order to eventually work in their business. They're running a hotel with a restaurant up in the Jura Mountains. I loved that area and often went there hiking with friends. That range began right above my hometown and stretched from there way over to France. I just couldn't take it anymore and so I stopped, she continued. I'm more of a creative type of person, and that's more my world. Besides, I became a hippie when I was 17 and started questioning everything. So she must be about my age, I thought. Like a rolling stone? It sort of slipped out of my mouth. Exactly, Bernardo, like a rolling stone. That's how it felt at first. In the meantime, thanks to the distance from it all, I feel that I've become more peaceful inside. The sun and the sea have done me a lot of good. I have even started creating some things myself. Really? Like what? It sounded great and I wanted to hear more. I make bracelets and necklaces. I haven't had the courage to sell them yet, but I'm considering it. It's just that Pierre's paintings sell quite well and we can live from it. If I weren't selling them for him, he might not sell any, as he isn't good at selling. I smiled. I can understand that. I don't think I would be good at selling either. I will go back in a week or so, and I don't know where to go on from there. Maybe to India, I continued. You seem to be really searching, Bernardo, she replied. I am. Well, so was I, but I have found a lot during my time here, so I've made a few spiritual experiences that have had quite an impact on me. I will stay for now. Pierre needs me, and it's sort of benefiting the both of us for the time being. My stay here has helped me too, and just today I had a very special experience, and I told her all about it. That sounds great, Bernardo. There are indeed voices to be heard in the waves, from the trees, from the stars, and the sun. Taking distance from the busy world does really help one to open up to what they're trying to tell us. She seemed wise, and like she had already somewhat acquired what I had just gotten into. We kept talking for quite a while longer, and it seemed we had forgotten time. I think I should be getting back to Pierre now. Maybe I will be here tomorrow night again, in case you would want to talk some more. That would be great. It was lovely talking to you, Anne. Then she turned around and looked at me, and I felt like streams of warm energy flowing from her eyes. With a soothing and at the same time steady voice, she said, Bernardo, I think there are basically three kinds of people. There are those who are not seeking, at least not knowingly, and living off material things, which brings them a certain satisfaction. Then there are others, like you, who are seeking for more, and yet others who have found through their seeking, but even they should never stop seeking. This woman was full of wisdom. For a moment I thought I must have met my guru. Anne came the next 2 nights as well, and we continued to have deep conversations. We were talking about different religions and their spiritual value. And I've read a lot over these past years from all kinds of sources, and I think that people like Jesus and Buddha and others had a lot of important things to tell us. Just before coming here, I had been reading the New Testament, and I believe in these things Jesus said. Many hippies do. I also read a lot from Buddha and also in the Bhagavad Gita. Perhaps there are things to extract everywhere, she said, but in the end it's your own spiritual experiences that will get you somewhere. And do you think I would find more answers if I went to India and Nepal? She thought for a moment. I think you will find it in time, Bernardo. And that's much less dependent on a location than on your inner desperation and receptivity. The next 3 nights she didn't show up. I spent my time talking to other people, and Paul always came with me as well. We didn't always talk, as sometimes he would work on his sunset drawings. During daytime, I went to check out the schedules for the boat and the ferry in order to get back to the mainland. There was one leaving from Ibiza to Valencia in a couple of days, so I decided I was going to take that one. I had been on a short trip to Gandia a couple summers before with a friend of mine, and I wanted to pass by and see if any of my friends happened to be there. My last night at the beach, I could finally see Anne walking over the small hill that was overlooking the ocean. She looked gorgeous, and I felt very excited to see her. I'm sorry I couldn't come the last few nights, she said. We ran out of money, and I needed to go to Ibiza and sell some paintings there. I told her that she made it just on time, as I was going to leave the next day. I felt like we could talk very openly, and I want to get close to other people besides my boyfriend. I don't mean sexually, but I need more friends, she said. And I felt that you have a good heart, Bernardo, and that you are sincere. And that's what I like about you. I told her that I had also really enjoyed talking to her and was happy she had come back one more time just before I was going to leave. Look, Anne, you're basically standing in front of a very lonely traveler. My search is a lonely one. I have lots of friends, but no one who is really close to me. Perhaps I have a hard time really trusting people. I had been hurt really badly by some people who had led me into a bad trip up in Holland. I can understand that, Bernardo. We were like innocent children, always thinking that people were going to be good to us, and we trusted everyone. But then we grew up and realized there was so much mischief in this world. It came to the point where we were even needed to learn to mistrust people. It's crazy. And I'm also really having a problem seeing where this world is going to. I love nature. I love the animals. But it's slowly getting destroyed by the tremendous industrialization that is taking place. And this saddens me. Where is this world heading to? And is anyone able to stop this madness? She was looking out towards the sea. Maybe it was a big wave that had caught her attention. Or maybe that's what she did when she was deep in thought. Then she looked at me, and I knew I could expect some wise words just from the look and expression on her face and the passion in her eyes. All the different resources Mother Earth has, some deep down below the earth, have become such a matter of greed among mankind to where they fight wars over them. It will always be very difficult for me to understand why people can be so irresponsible as to abuse Mother Earth continuously, thinking that she won't tire out one day and stop giving mankind even our basic needs. Well, Anne, it almost makes me not want to be a part of this world, really. That's why I'm a hippie. I feel at least I'm being a part of a whole lot of people who also don't want to be part of this madness. But I'm searching, and I don't know if I find something better. Bernardo, your search is not going to be in vain. Don't get discouraged by all you see and how you feel about the world. You won't be able to change much, but you can change inside to where you become those things you wish to see. We exchanged warm hugs as well as our addresses for writing and decided to stay in touch. If you really search for it, you will find it, Bernardo, were the last words she said to me as she disappeared over the hill. I was left with a mix of excitement to have met such a wonderful woman, but also with a bit of sadness. We had gotten so close in our deep conversations, and I had really enjoyed being with her. That's the end of chapter 4, and I will leave it at that for today and continue a couple of days or so. Hope you enjoyed it. Wish you a lovely day.